What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers and back with another Building on the Basics episode. So diving straight in, today I'm going to cover a few little bits that you can see on the screen here, and we're going to kick off with a sort of combo one where I talk a little bit about how to make doors and doors in general that work off timers. So someone asked in the comments for an example of how you could make a sort of door in the side of your ship that opened up and then a turret came out of that particular door on a platform and the whole thing was automated and it all happened with one button press. So it kind of gave me an option to explain how to do various different types of doors, but also how to do a bit about timers to go with them. So in front of me here we've got a couple of different variants on how you can do a sort of turret door that comes out of the ship itself. And the main difference between these two is that this one has the piston behind and the door behind the outer armour of the ship, if you imagine this is a wall. And the other version has the piston actually as the outer armour of the wall. So if I fly out here, you can see I'm using these grid spots to cover up what's actually going on. So cut that away, you can see that's actually on the outside of the ship, and I'm using these metal grids to hide the fact that it's there. So let's go and build one of these, and we're going to build, neither of those two are survival ready. So the one we're going to build is going to be a survival ready version of it, and I can talk a little bit about what concerns and how I go about building one of these sort of doors, and also talk a bit about how to set the timers up afterwards. So the first thing we're going to do is need to decide how big a hole we're going to have. So I get the right toolbar open here, you can see a turret is 3x3. And it's going to need to sit on a platform of some sort. So we're going to need 4 tall hole. So you can cut a 4 tall hole, and because it's 3x3, it's going to need to be 3 wide. So let's cut that at the right height so that we actually get something sensible. 3 wide and 4 tall. So that's big enough for the turret itself. But we're also going to need to give room for the door and the piston. So the door's going to be exactly the same size as the hole. So we need a 3x4 again. And then pistons are 2 blocks big. So take 2 blocks out there as well. Now, fortunately, the maximum distance a piston can travel is 4 blocks. So we're only going to need a single piston for this job. I'm going to go a little bit into how to do multiple levels of pistons a bit later in this video, and I've also talked a bit about how to connect pistons together in my last video. So go and check that out if you're interested. But what we've done is basically we've made our hole now and we've got our piston down. Now for this to work, we're going to need to use blast doors, and the reason for this is because blast doors don't fill the hole they're in. So if I put this one down here, you can see if I turn it on its side, it's not as wide as the block. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these because they don't collide with the blocks around them, and we're going to build a 3 tall one down the middle just using the square blocks, and then to make it look a little bit more interesting we can use these little angle blocks here on the sides to kind of pretty it up so it looks like a proper door. So same on either side. And the important part about these blocks here is not only the ones I've got out not only are they no clipping sort of vertically as I have it sitting now, but they also won't touch these edges here. So that there, just you see it can't actually connect on properly. It won't go there, it'll only connect to the door. That's important, it means that they won't rub along the sides. So I'm just going to spin these around, get these in position, and the door part of things is therefore done. So that's our front door, and if we go up here we can reverse the piston, it will fill up the gap. One thing I will say is, as it currently stands, if we reverse that piston now, it's going to damage this bottom row here, because at full extension it's slightly too long. So we're going to come to that in a minute, because the next thing we're going to need to build is the platform for our turret to go on. And again, this is going to use quite a lot of these blast door blocks. So let's start off back here, and we can see that again, if we get our turret out, we're going to need it to be minimum of 3 blocks back from the door in order for everything to fit. So you can see there, and then we're going to have, so our turret, there you go, that's 1, 2, 3, and then we need another 2 blocks again for the piston itself. So we can build our piston there. And that leaves us the 3 blocks in front that we need spare, and we're going to do exactly the same thing with this. We're going to put, oops, if I get the blast doors in the right way, we're going to put some blast doors on it in a way that looks kind of like it's supposed to be a platform. And these again are not going to touch the floor because they're blast door blocks. They're going to leave a gap underneath this tray that allows it to move. So if we go down under here, you can see there is a gap between the floor and this platform purely because we've used the blast doors. So one thing as well, you'll notice the piston head actually looks like it's touching the floor. That doesn't matter. The piston heads themselves don't have any collision on them, so that piston head will never cause any problems like that. But what will cause some problems is because of those blast doors, you'll see we can't actually put the turret on there. There's a gap underneath it that won't let us put it down. And not only that, but in order to get a block to put it down, we'd need more room there. So the solution to this is to cut underneath the blocks that are the length of that platform out. So we can go back like that and you can see the piston heads. We don't need that one. There is how long we need to cut out. And now we've cut that out. What have I done wrong now? Oh yeah, I've got the middle block missing. Now we've cut that out. We still can't put this in, but what we can put in is one of these blast door blocks on its side like that, on the tall way. So you can see that's sticking up enough now that when we get the turret back out, we can plonk that down there. So that's given us a flat surface to put the turret on, and all we need to do now is give something underneath here for that to run down, and we can use blast door blocks again for that. So if I make sure these are at the end, drag that out, you can see these it will allow me to place. And now I have placed them, we've got a nice gap there for that little bit to run down, and it's not touching any of the sides. So you can see now we've got sort of the basics of the door set up, and one thing we could do is if we replace all these blocks at the end here with a series of blast doors like that, everything's going to line up slightly better. All that will mean really is we don't have to adjust the length of this piston up here. So if I go up here now and try this, we can go in, and one of the things we're always going to want to do when working with timers is name things. So this, we're going to go and name it, or we're going to go and group it. And in this case, we might as well name it because there's only one of them. So we're going to call this simply turret door piston. So we know exactly what it is. And then we can click reverse just to check that it goes the right distance. And I'm going to speed it up a bit as well. So there we go, 2 meters a second. So nice quick door. And as you can see, that all lines up very nicely when shut. Looks like it's all part and parcel of the same thing. So as I did earlier, I'm now going to use these steel catwalk plates. And I'm going to use these because they're not thick, so they don't look like there's another block on the surface, but they can be used to kind of cover this stuff up and hide it from outside. So now the door's shut, we can line that all up nicely, and we do that like that. That's all nicely hidden. You can't tell there's any workings there particularly, and if you wanted to, you could cover the whole outside of the ship in this stuff just to sort of blend it all in, and then you'd have no idea it was there until such time as it was needed. You can even do it across the bottom here as well, like that. So there you go, we got our door hidden set up. That all seems functional, and obviously let's reverse this back around again. And this will come up nicely, and we can just go and check that our piston down here for this all functions as it should. And again, this should be fine, just set to max distance. We shouldn't need to worry too much, so we're going to speed it up again, and we're going to reverse it and just check that it all goes out the door cleanly. And yeah, we look all right there. Done a little bit of damage on the sides, I notice. Is that damage, or is that just... yeah, it is damage. Slightly unusual, I would imagine. Ah, yes, that's because I've put these plates on in a silly place. Either way, that is not something that would normally be a problem. And you've now got this door moving in and out. If you were having consistent issues with the edges colliding like this, so if I take this away, you are having issues around the edges with a bit of collision. The trick to solving that is simply to cut these two blocks here out, the ones that are in line with the lift. And if you use these on their side like that, on either side, the collision problems will go away, because again, these have got that sort of no clipping front edge on them. So everything looks like it lines up nicely. The turret comes out the front quite nicely, so we can reverse this back in again now. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a way of doing all of this on a single button. So there are kind of two approaches to how we set this up on a single button. I'm going to show you my preferred one first, and that requires more timers. There is a second way of doing it which is done purely on piston speed, but I'm not a fan of that because if you make any mistakes with it, everything breaks. So the way I think about timers is basically I literally look at what it is that I am trying to automate, and I think about it in steps. So what needs to happen here, if we imagine that this door is shut as it should be with everything closed, the first thing that needs to happen is we're going to need to open the door, and we're going to need to wait for that to finish. So that's a timer block. Put one down. The next thing that we need to happen, doors opened, is that we need this piston here to come out and reverse. So another timer block. And the final thing I want to do, just for a bit of safety's sake, is have these turrets not turn on until they're out of the door. So for that, we're going to have a third timer block. So that's 3 timers for this. But there's an extra consideration that you might miss the first few times you do this, and it's worth keeping into account. When we want to do this backwards and bring the turrets back in again, the order is different. It's not the same as simply playing these through again. Because, of course, these say the very first thing that happens is that door moves. And that would cut the whole thing off. So with this setup, because we've got doors in this sort of multi-stage thing, we're actually going to need 3 more to do it the other way round. So we've got the same thing set up. There we go, 6 timers ready for us to go. So the easiest thing to do now is jump in, and again, let's name this one too while we're here. So this is going to be our, what should we call this? Turret platform piston. Very straightforward. And then we're going to go down to the bottom and we're going to find our timer blocks. Now, I find it much easier, even though it takes a bit of time, to name your timer blocks so you know what they're doing. So we're going to have out 1, and this will be door. And then we're going to have out 2, and this is going to be the platform. And then we can have an out 3, and this one will be turret on. And of course, these ones would be the same thing. We actually let me do that quickly now. So we got in 1. I'm not going to bother putting the descriptions in like I did because I obviously know what these are going to do. In 2 and in 3. And all of this helps when you start getting bigger builds. It helps you remember what everything is doing and find things when you need to. So you'll notice actually quite a lot of what's on this platform ready for later bits of the video is already named because it's just that much easier like that. But let's set up the timers. So let's go through the out first. So first thing we're going to want to do, and because this is the one that started when we pushed the button, the delay here doesn't matter. This is the first stage. So the delay on the first stage means nothing. So we can go into these setup, and what we're going to want it to do under blocks here, we're going to need to go and find where's our too many pistons. So we're going to need to do the door first. So we're going to have this door here, and we're going to tell it we want it to reverse. So it brings the door up, and then we're going to want to start the next stage. So start. And then that's that one set. And on this one, what we do is we'd work out how long it takes the door to go up. And I know from experience that this is going to be about 3-4 seconds at 2 meters a second. So let's have it on 4 just for smoothness and safety's sake to begin with. We can come back and adjust that. And that's the delay after out 1 has triggered this before this actually starts doing anything. So basically it gives it time for the platform to move the door to move out of the way of the platform before the platform starts to move. So of course this one's going to be to move the platform out. So let's again go and find that platform piston, and we're going to have just again reverse for this one, and then we're going to start the next in the chain. Now obviously this is quite a simple setup here. There's not a huge amount going on with these timers, but hopefully it gives you an idea how to think about approaching them. And this one started the turret on, so we're going to want a little delay as the platform comes out before the turret turns on and starts shooting at things. It might just clip the size of the ship. So let's turn that down and have that on 2 seconds, so it's coming on just as it comes out. And that is our outwards timer setup all finished. Everything we need to do is now done there. The only thing I do need to do is, because we're using that reverse setting, so basically it's just toggling it backwards and forwards, we want everything to initially be in exactly the same place as the timers demand. So we need this door shut because we need it all positioned in one of the 2 states, either finished or started. So we're going to close all this down. Oh, what I did forget to do, of course, was set up the turret on-off thing. So let's go in here. I forgot the last stage, the turret on stage. After 2 seconds, all we're going to do is we're going to go and find our turret, which I forgot to name. This is why naming is so handy. So we can go in here, and if I go to control panel, I'll have that one highlighted. We can call this, we'll just call this turret 1 so we know how to find it. And, sorry, if we go back in here, go and find our turret on timer, and where's turret 1? There's turret 1. And here, I'm going to use toggle block on rather than toggle block on off. And that's to do with what I was just talking about, where when you're using a toggle state with on and off, it matters what state it's in now and what state it starts in. Whereas toggle block on is always going to do the same thing. So that's where you have the option to just use on or off rather than an on-off toggle, I prefer to do it that way around. It's much more reliable. It means that even though this turret's on now when it shouldn't be, it doesn't matter. Once it's gone through its cycle once, the turret will be off and everything will be set up like we like. So we've done half of our setup. Let's grab out a button panel, here we go, and put a button on it to actually make all that go and happen. So what we need to do is find this very first timer block and start a trigger now action. So that means as soon as we hit that, it's going to trigger all those timers off. So let's give it a try. Hit that, door's going to reverse, and you can see it started the next timer. So the door's gone up, now our platform's going to come out, and then obviously because the turret's already on, it's not about to turn on again. But if we'd done the on-off thing, what it would have done is turn off at that point. So that's why I like doing it in that particular method. So that looks like it was all pretty well timed. So now what we need to do is do exactly the same thing-ish in reverse. But as I said, it doesn't, in this case, work the same forwards and backwards. So in the other way around, and I'll do this a little bit more quickly, what we're going to want to do first is turn the turret off. So let's go and find turret 1. First thing we're going to do is turn off the turret, and we're going to start in 2. Now, there doesn't need to be very much delay at all between the turret turning off and the platform coming in. So we can turn that right, this one right down. In here, the next stage obviously is we want to bring in the platform. So we can have reverse on that. It's going to bring the platform in, and then we're going to start the last stage. And this is the one where the timer needs to be about right for the time the platform takes to come in. So let's have this down on 3, same as up there. And last thing we can do is shut the door. And then that setup is all completely done, and we can add it on a separate button just here. Put trigger now on in. And let's give that a try in reverse. So hit that, let's turn the turret off, platform's coming in, and now the door should come down. Now, one final thing I did forget to add to this while I was building it, but I should demonstrate just so people know what's going on, is how to do this with a survival ready version, because obviously this isn't conveyored up, and it's relatively straightforward, but there's one sort of noticeable change. So we need to get rid of this whole platform, and what we're going to change, get rid of these silly things along here as well. What we're going to change is we need to be able to put on here a conveyor. So if we go and find the conveyor setup, where is it? How disorganized of me, that should already be there. Let's go down, grab our useful conveyor tubes, and if we were to put this here, this one, and try and use one of these straight tubes, say, it's not going to work because we can't attach a blast door to the side of it. And that's a problem because it means that we're going to have to use these conveyor blocks. And these conveyor blocks are so deep that they're going to collide with the blocks up here. And all we really need to do to solve this is to cut out, much like we did with that central block, we now need to do that with these 3 down the sides. Replace those now with more of the blast door panels so we can fill in that gap. And then we now have the space to put on another conveyor on the front of here and build our turret on the top of it. And that's now all conveyed up to the back of this piston. Obviously I could have a cargo container on the back here, or I could continue it off into my cargo network. But if I just, nothing should have changed here, so I should just be able to press that same button again. It's not going to turn the turret off because that's a new turret. I'd need to go and re-add it to a group. But as you can see, I haven't built the platform, but you can see that comes in without any colliding with the floor. And that would be how you'd make these into a survival version rather than a creative version. Right, so next up we're going to have a look at how to put multiple pistons on top of each other in a way that's both stable but also enables you to use each layer of pistons independently as a lift. So what we have here obviously is a 4x4 grid, a bit like in my last video, of pistons ready to be hooked together. And one of the mistakes I think people make when trying to do this is they will use the trick from my last video and they will hook just this top layer together. So using that merge block trick, they'll join all these pistons up and they'll have a nice strong grid across the top here. But then they'll find that when they turn the elevator on, it doesn't move straight anymore. It tilts as it goes up, or it wobbles a lot if it's not supported around the sides. And the reason for that is because with these, it's best to try and join all the grids together. And that means you need to do them one at a time, starting with the bottom pistons. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, and also show you how to do one of those dual stage elevators, I'll just do this quickly. And what I'll do is, instead of talking over what I'm doing here, because this is literally just a repeat of what I did in the previous video at the moment, I'll speed it all up so you can see what I'm doing, but there's not so much of the actual build going on while this is all happening and there isn't a load of dead space. So there you go, you get the idea of how to stick that together if you haven't already seen it, hopefully, and that was one of my quicker piston joinings, for sure. Next up, what we're going to do, I'm just going to get rid of the last of this, and I'm going to make this bottom layer into like an actual platform in itself by hanging these blocks off the side of these piston heads. And that's something you can do if you wiggle the mouse around enough. You'll find that red block like that, red box like that, it sits over somewhere. That's the piston. That's the piston head. And if you attach it onto the sides there, you can build these sort of setups hanging off the side of the piston rather than needing to have an extra block in there. And that kind of helps with the elevator side of things. So I'm just kind of building out a platform here, which is going to make this floor of the elevator up. And then we will do the next stage above. And I'm just going to repeat exactly the same thing up there. But now with all of this bottom layer connected together, you can get the idea that everything's going to be a lot more stable. But also, if I come down here, go in here, obviously these, I named them before the video just to make things a little bit easier. So you can see this is L2 and I can see the rest of the ones on the grid. So now what I want to do is name these in a group so I know that I always use those together. And you can see that these are the upper pistons and they're not on the same grid as me. And what you can now do with this, if you wanted to, would be to, you can imagine I could build a floor onto this down here beneath the main level of the lift, and with a few blast doors like this on the edge. Come on, there we go. Yes, even I mess around with the rotation. Yep, with a few blast doors on the edge there, you can see how this could be like a secondary sub-level, even though you're only using two pistons on top of each other to gain yourself more height on the lift. You can actually then make use of that. And what I'll do is, again, fast forward, get this top layer all connected together, and then I'll show you how you can set the distances as such so that you can actually have 3 floors from this lift rather than 2 by making use of that level. So, fast forwarding again. One thing you do need to do with the top level is include the blocks that go on top of the actual pistons themselves have to be like standard height blocks, otherwise they won't connect on. It doesn't really make any difference other than aesthetically it's not quite as nice as perhaps you'd like, but still, it's not the end of the world either. So yeah, again, just putting the finishing touches. You can remove all of these extra merge pieces that I don't need anymore, and turn this top floor into a proper platform. And again, we're using blast blocks because they're needed to make this sort of thing space out correctly. Anything more than that, and I suppose you only need them around the edges of the lift. It's aesthetic reasons that I'm putting them in the sort of main middle area as well. But yeah, they're not required there. This is literally so that I can make it look a little bit more like an actual elevator. And those sort of 4 pads, the unusual part, rather than it all being that height. So again, just going to put some edges on this, and the final thing I'll do is I'm going to put this all together and I'm going to tie it into some lights to show you another way of thinking of timer blocks, because timer blocks don't have to always be about a sequence of actions, and they don't always have to be about time. they can be very, very useful as a function block as well. So in fact, let me just put that last one down. I'm not going to bother finishing that off. You get the idea of how that goes together. So let me just put some lights down for us to use as part of this. And what we can do now is, if I get a panel down, we can go in here and we can get the other pistons. So these U ones, we've already done the lower level group, which are all named L. We can do the upper level group, and we can name these all the same as well. So upper level. And now, just as a demonstration, you can see I can now reverse these independently of each other. So this is the bottom level coming up. And what I'll do is I'll lift this bottom level up, because that's already lined up with the floor down beneath us. And let me just stick some sides on this so we get an idea. And I'm going to line this up with the floor level we're on. So that's gone too high, but by how much? It's about 1 block too high. So a block's 2.5. So let's go and find lower level. And we're going to change the maximal distance. We'll change this to start off with 7.5 as a test, and we can just reverse this down and then bring it back up again. Once it's gone below that point, we'll hit reverse again just to see exactly where the lift finishes. Looks pretty good to me. So there you go. So you've got this floor sorted, and it's capable of moving independently, but you also now have this top floor to go as well. So again, pretty straightforward. We can just reverse that upper level, and that can go as high as you need it. Again, you know, if you had another floor that was only a little bit higher up, you would go and adjust that maximal distance so it's only a little bit higher up. But this one could also go absolutely miles up into the air, and you'll see that if you compare this to where the lift started, you know, where that floor started, that floor was below the level of this and is now 7 blocks up. Now, the thing that I'm going to use the timer for here and make this sort of slightly different is if we get, we only need a single timer for this, because that's the whole point of using this as a function block. So last thing I'll cover for today is if we go down here and find that new timer, we're going to call this Activate Lift. And what we want to do with this is literally we're going to put upper level reverse in there, we're going to put lower level reverse in there. Then, having forgotten to do so, I'm going to go and find those lights. Where are they? Interior lights here. And I'm going to put them all into a group. Lift lights, and we're going to, I don't know, let's just have a colour, doesn't matter what. There we go, some blue. And now if I go back to that timer, this activate lift, we can set up the actions, and we're going to get that group, and we're just going to have toggle block on off. And I mean, this is a pretty pointless button, let me be clear, but what this has enabled us to do is put all of this onto an activate lift, and we can just drag this down here and put it trigger now. And imagine this as if all we've done is, instead of only being able to put a single thing on our button, we've been able to put 3 things on our button, because this activate lift timer block actually contains 3 different actions. We're 2 different pistons and a light, but we're going to put it all onto a single button together. So just as a demonstration, we go in here, I can activate lift is already there, hit that, and as you can see, it's done all of those, and it's also turned the lights off. So let's say the lift's going up to the top floor, ready for a ship to land on it. You can have it rise to the top and turn its lights on all at once, and then when the time comes to retract the ship back down into the station, back down into the ship, whatever you're using this on, the lights go back off again. We just hit that one more time, and you can see the timer block doesn't run any time or anything like that. It just turns on those lights and activates both levels of the lift together. We could, of course, kind of do it all with a group in this scenario, but there are definitely scenarios where you can't do that with a group. So there you go, guys. That's 2 different ideas for today, 2 different sort of explanations for today. I've tried to make this a little bit more in depth and a little bit less speedy than the last one of the building of the basic last one of my building on the basics episode. So let me know if you think this is a better format, or whether I should go back to a bit more quick fire tips and tricks. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this, you found it helpful, interesting at all, please hit like, please hit subscribe. It really helps me and the channel out. And otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will catch you next time.